Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, and experience from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Sharon Lemac-Vincere. Sharon, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Frits. It's lovely to be here.
And Sharon, allow me to introduce you. You are a lecturer at Lancaster University, which is basically where you are. I assume you're one of the lecture halls of Lancaster?
I am indeed, yes.
Okay. You have a background in social legal investigation. And I think one of the reasons we wanted to invite you to this program is some people would call you the space lady. That's right.
Yeah. I love it, yes. Yeah. At home, that's what I'm called in my local area. I'm the space lady.
Okay, good. Well, again, Sharon, welcome to the program. Now, how did that happen? Why are you the space lady? Why do people call you the space lady?
So the reason that I'm called the space lady is I teach space entrepreneurship here at Lancaster University. I'm absolutely passionate about space, so anytime you sit down and have a conversation with me, it always ends up getting back onto the subject of space. So I teach my students how to use emerging technology linked to sustainable development goals for the space sector. So it's about future forecasting for the commercial space sector. So I guess that's why I got the title.
Now, I know some young boys and some girls, when they're very young, dream of, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up in life? Okay, I want to be a rocket scientist. But in reality, what brought you into space?
Do you know what? When I was little, do you know what I wanted to be? I wanted to be Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins. I wanted to fly. And I just wanted to be Mary Poppins. I thought she was the most amazing person in the world. And it's funny I was at an event on Monday, and Chris Hatfield, the astronaut, was there. And he was saying that sometimes to understand how you get somewhere, you've got to go back to look at that young person, don't you? And that young person, if you were to meet them now, they would be thinking they'd lucked out. Do you know, that's what he was saying. As an astronaut, he wanted to be an astronaut when he was little. And if he was to go back and speak to his 5-year-old self, he'd go, you've lucked out, you've managed to achieve it. I've not lucked out, I'm not Mary Poppins. But how I've got to space really is about that love of my children. So my younger son, so I used to be interested in space. I loved space when I was little, but when I was at school, you couldn't really do the subjects because they were for boys. So when I wanted to do computing studies, here's the story. Sorry, but I wanted to do computing studies, and my mum went to school because I got told I had to do secretarial. And I wanted to do computing. And my mum says, well, you're doing computing. And my mum went up to school and they went, no, that's for boys. She does secretarial. In the end, after a long argument back and forward, I eventually got to do my computing. And I did really well. I passed the exams and that was that. The point that I'm saying is that, you know, when I was a little younger, there were certain things that you couldn't get into. And actually that's changed now, or it's changing. It's maybe not all resolved, but there's more opportunities. So for me, when my younger son's passion for space, so I used to take him around the world to space camps in the summer, and we went to Huntsville in Alabama. And he was there for a week's camp, and he came out running, and he was so excited, full of this energy and enthusiasm. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And I was like, I have no idea, but I remember how enthusiastic I used to be about space. This is amazing. And he really inspired me. And he says, Mum, you really need to learn more about space so that we can have this conversation. You need to get on the same page. So it was through that conversation in Huntsville, Alabama, that I thought, I want to be someone that he looks up to, and I want to learn from him. So that's my Mary Poppins moment, maybe.
Well, it's both about flying to some, I guess. There's a parallel if you want it to be. But is that also something personal that you go way overboard? Because not only you went into space, you're teaching space entrepreneurship, and I want to cover that a little bit later, what that really means. But you also have a podcast, Space No Rocket Required. And I think I've lost count how many podcasts are on space. It's incredible. I found you in a top 70 list of podcasts around the world. So you're doing something good with, I guess, but why is there room for so many podcasts? So is this really the new frontier?
I think so. I think we're at a moment where we can do anything and we can be anything in the space sector because there's so many opportunities. It's almost the reason, and I know you're going to ask me about it, but the reason that we're talking about space, or I'm teaching space, is it's like a blank canvas. We can determine the future moving forward, and we can do that together. So for me, there's lots of opportunities. And the reason that my podcast is Space No Rocket Required is that space has got that kind of perception that's all about rockets, and actually is only engineers and super clever mathematicians that can operate in the space sector. But actually there's room for everyone. And actually we can all contribute to the space sector, and we're using the space-based technology in day-to-day life in our mobile phones. So it's about changing opinions and perspectives. And there's a bit in there about that little girl that was isolated, that couldn't get into the space sector all those years. Maybe that's still inspiring me to go, well, actually, we're not leaving anyone behind. We're going to open space for everyone, but we need to do it in a inclusive and responsible way. Okay.
Now, I have to ask you, I get the first thing which comes to mind are the Jetsons when I think about space entrepreneurship. But could you make it a little bit more reality? What does space entrepreneurship mean? And can you give me some examples maybe?
Yes, so the commercial space sector is actually in its infancy. So we're talking about Elon Musk, we're talking about Jeff Bezos, we're talking about Richard Branson. So when I started looking at it, I thought, why should 3 people dominate the space sector? Why should 3 people have that majority? And my research, early research, was about where are the women in this? Why are 3 men dominating space? Where are the females in that? So space entrepreneurship actually is just about using space-based technology and using innovation. So when we think about the developments in NASA and innovation, so how you've got the mattress on your bed, you've got your memory foam mattress, how you've got a mouse for your laptop, how your car tread, your tires and your treads. That was all developed for space, but we use that on Earth. So it's about using the technology to change the world. Yeah. So looking at that and actually looking at imagining this new world. So at the moment, we use cloud storage. And that's in the desert. Yeah, we've got big data storage in the desert, and that's where data is. In the future, that data will actually be stored above our head in low Earth orbit. Yes, so they're working on that low Earth orbit. So if you think about some diseases that we can't cure on Earth, but if we take you off gravity, we take you to low Earth orbit, is there a different way that the drugs operate in your body? Can we find cures? And I'll give you one example as well. A Japanese space agency, they are working with a French perfume company, and they're growing roses on the ISS, and it's space perfume. So there's so many opportunities. It's almost like limitless what you can think about.
Wow. Yeah. So no, because when you start off with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, immediately it's putting people into rockets going up, but it's also bringing that technology down to earth and apply it on the ground. I can also imagine this is about, well, the example of that we're going to literally put things in the cloud or beyond the clouds, that is also something which at least I wasn't aware of.
Okay.
Yeah. So what kind of people does this course attract? Are these the visionaries say, I have a dream? Are these, could say, the entrepreneurial types of who wants to have a take on this?
So it's a compulsory module, and it was called Entrepreneurship Principles and Practice. And I was a little bit sneaky, so I hope I don't really get it out. But I thought, well, what's the point in teaching my students about business today? They can learn that from anything really. But what about giving them the opportunity to be early innovators in a sector where there's limited rules? Let them see the power that they can bring to it. So it's a master's module, and it's the second year I've run it, and I developed a metaverse as well to teach in it. So they come into the class and I talk about space, and some of them go, I've never thought about space. What is this lady talking about? So I give them a background and kind of give them the context of space and the opportunities. Talk about emerging sectors and markets and about innovation. And then I say, so it's a 2-week block. They're with me all day, every day for 2 weeks, Monday to Friday. And I say, right, you've got to think about a wicked problem, a really difficult problem, because for our business to succeed, it needs to be a purpose. So I want you to look at a sustainable development goal. I then want you to use space-based technology to address that sustainable development goal. Because we know that some of the most difficult problems on Earth, we find it difficult to find solutions, but can we find a solution using space? How can we use space as a route to maybe solve some of these problems? And that frees them, because there's no confines, there's no preconceived ideas. And we go through the module challenging their worldviews and ideologies, because the tendency is straight away that you take what happens on Earth and you plug it into space. But it's a really different context, isn't it? It's a different climate and environment. So what works on Earth may not necessarily work in space.
Yeah.
So it's about freeing them up and giving them innovation, an opportunity to experience innovation firsthand. And then I take it that step further and I say, right, okay, I understand that these are conceptions and it can be really difficult to create a business for space. I get that. So let's create one using artificial intelligence. So we used Adobe AI in a beta form. So they were able to build models. And then let's plug that into a metaverse. And I want you to create a metaverse in a virtual world where you're going to pitch to investors your space-based idea. And actually, they love it, because they're learning so many things. They're thinking about new sectors. They're seeing that actually they can address wicked problems from different perspectives, and they don't need to be rigid to worldviews or things that are influencing, limiting their thinking. And they can actually see that they can shape the future, so it empowers them.
Yeah, this reminds me, by the way, a lot of the book which came out a couple of years ago called the Blue Ocean Strategy, Blue Ocean Thinking.
Yes.
So this is not just about literally space entrepreneurship. It's also a metaphor, a mechanism to get people to think in a way that they free up their mind, unlimited. So.
Yeah, and underpinning that, I want them to challenge assumptions about the leader that they're going to be, because we need more responsible leaders in the world. So that's why the Sustainable Development Goals are embedded in it, so that they can understand and start to think about it. So yeah.
And is that link accepted, to link the entrepreneurship you teach with, okay, let's do it for good?
Yes, I think so. Quite a lot of my students say that the module is life-changing, and as an academic, that's amazing when somebody says, actually, I did this and it's changed my life, and there's lots of lessons there. So and the way that they're assessed is reflective essays. So they write a reflective essay on their thoughts and their feelings and how it's changed or not, but majority it's changed. And actually, some of the case studies, when I show them some of the case studies, they go, well, actually, maybe when I started this module, I was thinking about commercial, I had my commercial hat on. But actually, what I understand is I can make more money if I'm a responsible leader, because actually it's embedded in my values and I'm doing it for a purpose and a good. So therefore, the money follows that, doesn't it? Whereas if it's all about cutthroat, making money as quick as you can, then that's short-termism. And actually, it doesn't always feel that great.
True. Yeah, that actually, the research from Alex Edmonds from the London Finance School actually supports that. He did a great research on realizing that profit and purpose are aligned, assuming that you have long-term goals. And that's where also, I think what you're saying helps here. Hey, now, you just shared with us where you got your inspiration from. It's actually your son. But I was wondering, additional to that, do you have any role models for yourself or role models you share with your students? Look, these are people or situations where you feel, hey, have a look at that.
So I teach that here. And the challenge is that if we idolize one person, then actually we've got a challenge that we could be let down. And if we have that connection on just one person and we focus on it, when it turns out that they're fallible and they're human, then we can be really let down. And so I always say to my students, like, do you have role models, or what kinds of qualities is it that you want to emulate, rather than having just that one person or that key kind of key focus? For me, I guess rather than a role model, it's a quality that I look in for people. So if you were to cut me upside down and whatever, running right through me like a stocky rock is I hate injustice. So I really don't like injustice. And for me, that takes different forms. So I like to make sure that my teaching's inclusive. I don't like seeing someone being left out. And that is back to that responsible leadership kind of thing. So for me, it is Nelson Mandela, it is Ruth Ginsburg, it's people that have stood up and been accounted for, because people think to stand up and challenge inequality or injustice maybe is short-term difficult, but actually it takes an awful lot of strength. And the challenge is that you could be almost as cancel culture today, isn't it? You could be outclassed. So it takes a lot of willpower. So I think for me, it's those kind of people, the qualities that they display rather than the one person.
I got that. And are you now? You mentioned a couple of names, very big household names, global recognized names. Do you also have personal experience where you realized, okay, we should not focus on individuals, but we should look at the characteristics as a whole?
Yeah. So my mum's been a great role model. My mum's a nurse, and my mum's always been one, wanting to help people and take care of others. And she's always been one that says, don't ever let someone determine your future. You determine it. So if someone says you can't do it, that's their limitation, not you. So that's been good. And I guess it's been having that loving environment to grow up in, isn't it? I feel very privileged, we live in a Western rich country, and to grow up in a family environment and at a certain time, I know that gives privilege. So
now, being responsible for your own destiny, which I think basically that's what I'm hearing your mother say to you, advise you, also means that, hey, it's going to be your responsibility at the end of the day. So I'm assuming, like everybody else, you had your ups and downs, some failures. How did you cope, or what did you learn from your biggest failures? And assuming that you've experienced a couple of them.
So I set up my first business as a single parent straight out of university. So I was 23 when I had my son. And in the UK, you can get benefits to live on benefits, yeah. And I was told that I had to go to the job centre and take benefits. And I says to the lady there, I says, really, is that all I'm worth is for you to give me free money? And I appreciate that that's a choice, back to this choice. And I said, is that all I'm worth? I'm sure I'm worth more than that. I'm smart, I've got lots to offer. And she went, but you've got a baby to look after. So that night I went home and set up my first business. There and then I went home and I got £100 from my parents to set up a phone. Sure how long ago it was, but a plug-in dial-up phone. And I set up my first business, and I used Paintbox, and I designed the world's first children's tartan, and I called that The Child after my son. And it was about children around the world having a role model, but having access to love, happiness, education, and having the opportunities to move forward. And Madonna was one of the first people that got my baby. So I designed a baby range.
Okay.
And baby Rocco was getting christened at Stornoway in Scotland. So baby Rocco's a couple of months older or younger, but there's a difference, a couple of months between him and my son. And she was getting baby Rocco christened, and she got my range, and I ended up selling all over the world. So my cottage business that started off from Paintbox became a tartan business that I exported around the world.
Wow.
So back to you.
That's actually quite an interesting, you could say, segue from first talking about space, and all of a sudden, hey, you had this amazing business selling around the world. But is that still something you do? Is that on sideline or?
So no, I've still got the full rights to the tartan. But when you asked me about one of the biggest challenges
Yes.
that I faced. So that was a way back in the millennium. So I'm the single parent. I've got this business that I thought was going to be a cottage business that went crazy overnight. I was using e-commerce, so that was the millennium. So e-commerce was brand new. Yeah. And I went to America on a trade mission. And I arrived the day before September 11th happened. So I arrived in America on 10th of September 2001. And I had quite a lot of stock, so I put a lot of money into stock because I had lots of sales meetings lined up, and September 11th happened. And that really brought into focus family again. Yeah, it brought in family because I was here in a different country away from my son, and this horrific thing was happening, and I couldn't get back home. To him, it just really brought into focus how precious life is, and actually you just don't know from one day to the next what's happening. So I was away for a couple of weeks because it was hard to get back home, and my stock was impounded for 6 months. So as a young entrepreneur who put lots of money into her business to take all the stock out, I had, a short-term financial gap there to address. And that's how I got into teaching. That's how I got into teaching. Because when I came...
Is that an example of serendipity? I mean, you're still there, so obviously you like it. You love it.
I love teaching entrepreneurship. There's nothing more exciting than being able to help people see that they actually can change their life. They're in control of their life. They don't have to wait on someone else to create a job for them. They've got that power. So it's lovely. But yeah, I've been in and out of teaching over my career because I went on to set up another business a few years later.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you, finish this conversation off with one question and one small topic we need to cover. First of all, what's your advice to young people starting out on their own journey? And so maybe that's the thing you share in your room, but to the general public, what would your advice be for people who are starting off their own career?
I would say that it's the most exciting, exhilarating thing. It's extremely difficult, but you have the agency and the ability. You just need to believe in yourself. Everybody's got imposter syndrome, and you don't need a lot of money to set up a business. I set up mine with £100, and it's changed my life. You can set up your business very. You can be really frugal and set up your business with little money, but you have the ability, and it's not just for people that we have to look up to and idolize. You can do it.
Okay.
That's my advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now, I want to circle back to when we started off the conversation where you said, actually, my role model, which the person who guided me what I'm doing right now, was your son.
Yes.
Wanted to your take on the role of adults in this case.
Well, we've got a saying at home, and it's called adultitis. There's too much adultitis in the world, and we expect young people to look up to us. And actually, we need to start looking at the younger people, because they have got so much to offer. And actually, when we look at them and we actually listen, because we tend to be so distracted that we don't listen to the children, because we've got this kind of superiority complex, haven't we? That's what we call the adultitis. That we've got a superiority that because we're older, then we know everything. But actually, see, these young people, they are phenomenal. They are so fantastic, and we need to get over ourselves, and we need to start listening to them. And actually, my young son, when he was younger, he's a wordsmith as well. And when I was doing my PhD, I would go, "How would you say that?" And he came up with some nuggets of amazing descriptive ways to convey information. So we need to get over ourselves, adults, and we need to start listening to young people.
So at the end, I want to thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing your thoughts, not only giving advice to all those young listeners out there, but also advice to all those old listeners out there. Beware and ask yourself, do I have adultitis or not?
Adultitis.
Yes. Great word I learned today. Sharon, thank you so much.
Thank you so much as well.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.